We are MCC Squared, and this is a special, kind of a special episode that we're going to be talking about motherhood because it's the beginning of May, and so we're going to just kind of talk about motherhood and all of its sometimes gross glory and just the different types of mothers and different types of mothering that kind of just transpires. And we really just want to give just like a nod, if you will, to all the mamas and all that encompasses this month. So that's where we're headed, and thanks for listening in.
Yeah, so I have a colorful motherhood journey, as I like to say. It has had, and I'm sure so many of you can relate, but it has had so many ups and so many downs, so many hills, so many valleys. But I mean, God's not let's just toe the line kind of God, is he? He's like gonna give us all the things. So, I thought I would share a little bit about my motherhood story, and then if you want to kind of chime in, and then you can share a little bit about yours. So, I had a daughter, Bailey Ann, who had severe special needs. So as a first-time mom holding this baby, and at the time, we didn't really know there was really anything wrong. But as she didn't meet milestones like holding her head up, you'd call her name and she would not like acknowledge that you were talking to her. And she wouldn't look for your voice and stuff. And so there were little things that, like, as a new mom, it was like, I know they should be done, but maybe you hear those stories of, well, each kid is their own. And so anyway, as time went on, I don't want to go into all those details, but she was diagnosed with microcephaly, Dandy-Walker syndrome, epilepsy, and cerebral palsy. And so my motherhood journey in the beginning didn't look like all of my friends. Right. It didn't look like a typical motherhood journey, but it was met with physical therapy, occupational therapy, equestrian therapy, aquatic therapy, doctor's appointments, feeding tubes at one point, and medications, and just all the things, and that encompassed. And so that in of itself is a hard journey and a very challenging journey. And so I have experience with that, with being a mom with special needs. And then I had a neurotypical baby girl, but when she was born, I was like, oh my gosh, what if there's something wrong? And so the doctors like reassured me, and all of the things. And of course, as Carly grew, she was definitely neurotypical, and then some. She started talking in complete sentences before she was 2, and she was fully potty trained at 18 months. So like, when I say neuro, she just went, whoo.
She had it.
Yes, and she's always been very independent. And so
fiercely independent.
Yeah, just let me lead my way, mama. And so not used to that. I'm used to one needing me for everything, and then having one that's just like gone, like doing her thing. And so we were content with our girls, and we were adjusting to life, and I was adjusting to motherhood, and we had a surprise. Not gonna go into that, but we had a surprise, little Michael Jr. So he, Michael J, his pregnancy was kind of rough. I had gained a lot of weight, was borderline gestational diabetic, just a lot of early labor and just different things that were happening. And so I started having contractions one day, went to the doctor, and he was like, we're going to go ahead and admit you. And then his oxygen started dropping, and then they admitted me, and then they were like, well, you're having contractions, but you're not dilating, that whole thing. And it ended up being a very traumatic and scary birth in time. So I have had the natural births, and then I had the C-section, and then it was very, very rough. I had to have blood transfusions. Michael Jr.'s lungs weren't developed all the way. We had to do the NICU, that whole thing. And he was a preemie. They thought that he was, they thought I was at 38 in some weeks, and he was born at 35 weeks and some days. And so anyway, it was just a shocker. And so now I have a preemie and a child with full special needs, and then my independent flyer. And so
of a wide range.
That was, I just can't. I look back at some of my female friendships during that time, because we talked about friendships last month, and man, I was like, those poor girls, they wanted to help, but I didn't even know how to help myself at times. So, Jesus was all over that. Yeah. But Michael was about 15 months, and then we had a unexpected turn of events, and Bailey passed away very quickly. Was not expected. We knew her life expectancy wasn't going to be like very long into adulthood and things like that, but it was definitely not, it didn't seem like it was going to be her time anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So that was very traumatic. So we lost her, and then we had a couple of miscarriages, and then I think we were just content with Carly and Michael J. We were just like, this is what God has given us, and we're blessed and we're happy, and we had other things going on at the time in our life, so we definitely were like, okay, we're moving forward. And then we got Cade, our sunshine, and so our baby of the family, and he is a complete joy and a complete blessing. He is neurotypical, but does have dyslexia and some reading disability, and so the journeys of going through what that looked like. And then now that Michael Jr., backtracking a little bit, he is on the spectrum, and he does have some behavioral and other disorders and diagnoses. I don't like to share too much because it's not my story to share all of it, but anyway, and so I am a mom of many hats is my point. I can relate to the special needs, the neurotypical, the neurospicy, all of the fun, and the death of a child, miscarriages, different types of births. So I think that's why I'm passionate about my doula. It's just because, man, if I could go back and redo some things now that I know now, I could go back and redo them then. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. So I just love to be advocates for mamas. So an advocate for mamas.
Yeah. It's quite the range that you've experienced and walked through, and just the amount of wisdom that you've gained from each experience and are still gaining.
Yeah, I was going to say still
now
gaining.
As you're parenting mostly adults.
Yeah.
And Cade, which sometimes he's a very mature teenager sometimes. And then on my end, my 16-year-old is more of like a 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. It's a joke. It's a joke now. But my oldest, people are like, well, aren't you worried about things like very culturally appropriate for 16, 17-year-olds? I'm like, homie is still in like footy pajamas and has a bed full of stuffies. I think for some of these worldly milestones, I think we're fine.
Yeah.
For a bit. He still thinks girls have cooties, not like literally, but it's like, Mom, girls are just weird, and I think I'm okay. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm okay with that. So that's Logan. He has ADHD and OCD, which I wish would present itself in like tidiness.
I think that ADHD just kind of counteracted.
Yeah. So that his little neurospicy brain there. And then we have Caleb, who is neurotypical, and it's like a mini version of his dad, but with a little bit of like me in there. So it's really super fun trying to parent that. I love both set of our parents because God bless them. And then Cameron was our surprise baby. We were kind of in the same position of we have two, all of like the places that you can go. It's like for groups of 4, and we'd had that discussion, and we didn't need to get a bigger car, and we didn't, like all the car seats fit in the car, and it was like I had sold the crib because Caleb didn't like the crib, so he went into like a twin bed very early. We had sold like all like the big things, and then I was nauseous. And then I was late, and then I was cranky, and Bill was on nights, and I remember the look on his face when he came downstairs for dinner, because he would wake up around then so he could spend the evening with everybody. It's like, so, do you want news that's going to rock your world before or after dinner? And he's like, it took a second. He's like, oh, you're pregnant. It's like, yeah. So it was very much a surprise, very much like that completion, though, like that little bit of sunshine. And to this day continues to be like that little extra bit of life, even if he's in those preteen years and starting to get like that angsty teen little button in his brain. He's fine.
They're all fine.
Yeah. So all 3 of them were C-section babies. Logan started that trend.
Yeah.
It was, my husband made a joke shortly after. I don't know if I ever told you this. Shortly after, still in the hospital, had labored for 21 hours before like contractions stopped and movement stopped, and they're starting to be like, something just might be off. Like, you think? And so we're in recovery, have Logan, and Bill goes, it's kind of like you ran a marathon when you could have just gotten in the car.
Oh.
I was like, I think I need water. I need you to go find me some water. Like, it's funny now, but in the moment I was like, dude, no. So that's a very tiny snippet of like how all of mine came to being. And we had a miscarriage before Logan when Bill was deployed. We were very early married and got brushed off by doctors, and it didn't really matter because I didn't know first. So I was like, but it does. Like, but it really doesn't. You're fine. And then got just dismissed and sent home. They're like, so that was fun.
Yeah.
But so we have the 3 boys, and they are varying levels of fun. It's a wide range of tone.
Yes. So I think the first segue that leads into a great segue if we talked about our different children. I know I did a live video talking about this a little bit, but
on our Facebook page.
Yeah. About all of our children are unique. Just like we're all unique, and God created each of us on a purpose, for a purpose, and we're all unique and we're all His. So are our children. And and so parenting them is a lot of fun. But it's also very different. And so like where one needs a certain type of discipline, another one may not. And and so just seeing the uniqueness in our children, it parenting is a lot for me, a reflection on my walk with Christ. I can learn so much about the Lord just in my relationships with my children and and parenting them.
Yes.
And oh my goodness. And then, I don't know if your mom ever said this, but mine sometimes, or even I can remember sometimes my grandparents even saying, I just can't wait till you have one that's just like you, or, or something along those lines. I'm sure we've all heard that. And just how you get a child that has your same attitude. And you're fighting with a
Yeah.
little miniature version of yourself.
Or your husband.
Yes, or your husband. Yes. And so man, there's so much learning and pruning and shaping and growing.
And then you get to do the same thing with your kids.
Yes.
Because all of that is like, I don't know if I've grown. I would not have grown to the level that I am now without being a parent.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that was how God just kind of like got my attention and was like, guess what? Grow up. And I know that there's some that don't need that, like, hello. And I know that he had tried to get my attention before that. And he's probably like, okay, she's going to really need me when I give her this. And so, like, motherhood can be lonely, even if you have people, like you were talking about with your other mama friends with Bailey. Even if you have people, we're all on our individual, like, walk with our kids and our learning experience and our spiritual growth. And so when you are in that, you can have that support system, but still feel isolated and lonely because no one else is parenting your kid.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think those early years of motherhood were probably some of the loneliest, even though, especially once we moved to Missouri, I had a pretty solid group of people.
I just don't think that people talk about it a lot. It's not talked about.
Right.
You think, oh, I see her and she has all these women around her. But, like, do we see her? And so, like, for me with Bailey, I mean, everywhere I went, it was a wheelchair. It was a feeding machine, a feeding tube. Like, I'm looking at my other mama friends and I'm like, oh, you just have a diaper pack, you know, or whatever. Right. And they're like, let's get together and mommy and play date. Let's go here. Let's go there. And I'm like, they have no idea the amount of planning and work it takes into getting my kid ready and getting my kid to go to this event. And then, yeah, Carly's running around having a blast with all the kids. But I'm like by myself walking Bailey to the slide or swing that's for her. Right. Or I'm walking around pushing her because I don't want her just to sit there and watch all the other kids. And sure, little kids would come up and be like, what's her name? And, you know, talk. But it just was isolating. And then I'd see, oh, they're all over there talking and I'm over here. And it was very lonely. It was a very hard. But I also know that Bailey was a gift. Her life was a gift. She was a gift. And it's crazy. All these years later, I still learn things. Like, God still shows me things about her life in seasons that I'm going through or whatever. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah. And I can see things, you know. And so, but yes, I would say it, even with neurotypical kids, you know, it is isolating. Like, mine's wanting to get up every hour, so I'm exhausted. But this, you know, you just.
Right. It's such a range. And I think even if we're sharing stories, like with our group or our mom or our aunt or your older lady friend at church or in Bible study or wherever you're sharing your stories, it's still not the same as like living and walking it out. So several years ago, I took all three of mine to Alaska and we stayed with my mom's for about a month. It was about 6 years ago. So they were all still very we were still working on a lot of things. Yeah, we were still working on a lot of things. But after we left, about a week later, my mom called me and she goes, I really need to apologize to you. I was like, okay, why? She goes, well, I always thought you were kind of just being over dramatic about like just the craziness of your boys. She goes, I know that 3 boys are a lot because I had 3 cousins growing up, 3 boy cousins, and we were close and lived like 2 streets apart. And we did everything. So I knew that it was a little bit different, but I just thought that you had an issue with like control in your house, or that it just wasn't like, you weren't like on top of things. And she goes, and I was talking to our pastor about it, and she goes, I don't know how she does it, because she's not exaggerating. If anything, she's downplaying it. She was so seeing like the day to day and the bedtime and what that looks like, and the waking up and the dressing, and my gosh, putting the clothes on the bodies, like keeping the clothes on the bodies.
Yes.
And she's like, if anything, you're underplaying it. And she was, I'm sorry that in my head, like she never came out and told me that I was like
crazy in her head.
Yeah. But she very much was like, I see now what you mean by this, this, and this. And okay, then. So until you, and we don't have the opportunity like to live with our friends.
Right.
Like live with the people in our group. But there's so much that it's very easy to make like those snap judgments about friends and their situations. Like, why don't you just put them in timeout?
Can I pause you there? Yeah. Like, so my son, Michael Jr., God love that boy, when he turned 18, my husband and I both like, we kept him alive. We kept him alive. He was my one that my daughter comes screaming in from the back door. She's probably 9. He's probably 7. He's trying to jump off the roof into the pool. And I'm like, oh my Jesus. And I'm like, drop everything and run. And there he is standing on the roof. And I'm like, would you please get down? And he's like, I just want to jump. And I'm like, no. So, and you get the, why don't you just spank him? Why don't you just take this away? And I'm like, you don't think I've tried everything that I can think of?
Changing their diet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was a fun one.
Yeah. So we all get that. Yeah. Like, I think that you viewing probably have experienced similar situations, And so I think while we mean well and offering those tips or those advice moments, I think what's better is when we roll up our sleeves and we say, hey, why don't I come walk with you while you're pushing your daughter? I just want to talk with you. Or, hey, let's, I don't know, fill it in. You know what I mean? Like they're the doing and not so much the, I feel like.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that even like when we feel alone, I remember I called my aunt just crying. I think my mom was out of town or on a business trip or something. And she's like, what's wrong? So my aunt is also a mom of 5, and 2 are very, I don't want to say like, we're all a little neurospicy in our own ways. They're very intellectually gifted. So they needed a lot of extra attention to make sure they weren't getting bored or destruction would happen. And so that was kind of how Logan was very early on. If he got bored, we've all seen that meme, right? Where you can destroy the house with a granola bar. If they got bored, that was Logan. I'm pretty sure someone actually like was tapping into my house for that one. I remember I called her crying and she's like, Adrian, God gave you this child for you. He didn't give Logan to your sisters. He didn't give Logan to me or to any of my kids or any of your friends. Like, God gave Logan to you. So he's also going to give you the tools to parent him. And she goes, and I know that everybody says that. Everybody says that he's going to equip you, and you're just sitting there in the middle of all the chaos saying, okay, can I have that tool now? Like right now, I need it right now. And she's like, but you can tell God that.
Yeah.
You can tell God, I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know what to do. And how do I parent this child that you created for this family? And at first I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But once I had calmed myself down a little bit, got myself a little regulated, probably involved ice cream or something at that point, I realized the truth in that even when we're lonely, even when we don't have like the friends living with us, even if we have our support system, in the hard moments and in even the good moments, that those children weren't just entrusted to us to raise, but they were gifted to us to raise. And there's learning in that, and there's grace in that. I thank God for grace in parenting, because I'm so glad I'm not judged on my parenting.
Right.
And I think that's just so it's hard to keep that perspective when you're in the middle of it, because sometimes they don't feel like gifts, and sometimes they don't feel like the good and squishy and cuddly little things that we see on like the TV shows. Everyone's like, oh, it's such a pretty baby, and you're like, you want to see what it does at 3 a.m.? Like, I think that's such a big part of the growth walk and the maturity in like our own, like our day-to-day life, but also our spiritual walk,
right?
And getting closer to God and letting God like just rewire our brains, and it takes more of the focus off of us and puts it on other people, but also it forces, for me anyway, it forced me into acknowledging I cannot do it all by myself. I cannot do any of it by myself. And who are these children?
Yeah, I can remember praying when I was pregnant that like over each baby, and just like, I can't wait to know their personality, Lord, and who they're going to become and who they are. And so watching, like you're talking about, like me seeing who they're becoming as teenagers and young adults, and just seeing their personality now, and then remembering times that we went through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but had Carly not gone through that, I don't know that she'd have the leadership skills that she has to be a manager at her job at 21 years old, you know? And so like, oh my goodness, trusting and knowing that God has instilled each of these qualities in your children. There was something going around the internet a couple of years ago when the world was ending and COVID and all the things. And I think it was a dad that wrote it, but I remember reading, we get so caught up in our children, but he's like, don't forget, and being scared of what's going to happen in our world and all the doom and gloom. And he was like, but don't forget that God created your child. They are his, and he created them because we're going to need the Daniels and we're going to need the Esthers for our time period, and trust God in that, and trust that he's going to equip them with exactly what they need. And that circles back to, he gave each of us our unique children because he created each of us knowing what children we were going to have. And so just seeing his divine plan. But like you said, in the middle of those years when, you know, stomach virus is hitting and everyone's hitting a toilet and kids are screaming, and everyone's screaming, you're like, am I created for this? You know?
Or yours is the kid at the park, and everyone's like, whose kid is that? And you're like, $5 says it's mine. In fact, it's probably all of mine. And most of the time it probably is. So it's everybody's journey is different. But we all, I think if you got like down deep with your friends, with your support circle, you'd find that a lot of the things that you walk through are the same. You're going to find that most moms walk through loneliness at some point, if not until they're
we're in the grave, because we adult moms, I mean, I miss my child. She works a lot, and so like there are times where you're like, man, I miss things. And
so there's always going to be like that aspect of that, but loneliness doesn't mean isolation.
Correct.
And I think that's something that I have seen with moms who have like littles, and they say that, you know, I'm just lonely and I'm isolated. I said, well, are you lonely because you don't feel like you have people, or are you pulling away from people because of this, and this? And then they're like, oh, well, I don't know. So, but all of that, like, you can be self-isolating because you're like, I have all of these things, or it takes 99 people to make sure that mine aren't jumping off of buildings.
Or you have the child with special needs, and it's easier to just isolate than try to put that effort out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of days, because all three of mine are about 4 years apart, about 4.5 years apart. So there was a lot of times when someone would be like, hey, do you want to go to the park? I'm like, no, I do not.
No.
Because it was more work to get them to the park, just to get ready to walk out the door.
Yes.
Because someone's sock wouldn't fit right, or someone's shoe would feel like a shoe, or the shirt wouldn't be the right color, or, the whole list of things, especially when you have neurodivergent kids. And I think it's important to know that we all walk through a lot of the same circumstances and a lot of the same emotions. And I think we think other people are going to judge us for saying, I'm lonely today. And people are like, well, you have your kids. Why are you lonely? Do you know my kids?
Yeah. I think there's so many different aspects of motherhood, and we've touched on a lot, isolation, different types of children, different types of circumstances involving, like some of us are single moms, some of us are widowed, some of us are where our husbands work so much that we are by ourselves a lot with our children. There's not a lot of like me time or breaks or things. And so while we want to touch on all of that, and we will this month, our goal in this was that hopefully as you all are online and you're watching this and you have your circles and your own tribes and your own sisters and moms, that you're uniting, that you're looking for, oh, that mom seems a little lonely today, or that mom seems a little isolated. Let me go talk to her. Because the goal of like we've said all along with My Creator Calls, is that to encourage one another, to uplift, edify, and equip each other for our journeys that God has called us to. And so whatever your motherhood journey looks like, know there is another mother out there who is going through similar things as you. And I just want to reiterate, like, instead of judging or giving that tip or that advice, maybe it's just coming alongside, or maybe it's just having empathy. Maybe it's praying for that mom. Maybe it's offering to say, hey, you don't want to go to the park? Fine, I'm coming over and I'm going to bring a coffee or whatever, And so, but knowing that you're not alone, that's the biggest thing. Like, you have a community here with My Creator Calls. You have a community with the people that God has put in your own life that you spend time with. And so just encourage you all to love on each other and unify. Motherhood can be a crazy thing, but a beautiful thing.
Yes. And even those who have empty nests, loving on people, on the moms who you see in church or at parks or the Walmart store or anywhere, mamas who are not physical moms yet. Like, this is a place for you to just come and find your community and be less lonely in that part of your walk right now too.
Yeah. And it takes a village, as we say, it takes a village. And so like, and we'll talk more when we get into these topics, but like, I know that, sometimes I can't reach my own kid, but Adrian can touch Cade and reach Cade sometimes. Sometimes I'm helping my friend Megan with her little girls that I absolutely adore, and Megan's like, do whatever you got to do, because you know what I mean? And so like, it takes all of us, and it's just a village, and God, that's what God's beauty is. He wants us to be the body of Christ, to be his hands and feet, to operate in unity together. He created us as relational beings. So no, you're not isolated or alone.
Yes. And there's more of this coming.
Yes.
And we can't wait to share more about motherhood and our journeys. And hopefully we can, Amanda mentioned getting a guest speaker or two on here. So hopefully we can get those to you pretty quickly. But just remember that, like Amanda just said, you're not alone. You're not isolated. And all of that to say, we will see you guys next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.